Welcome back to another video tutorial for the Pirate MIDI Bridge 6 and Bridge 4 MIDI controllers. This time we're going to be talking about scrolling mode, which is a switch mode for the primary side of each switch on a Bridge 6 or a Bridge 4. There are two modes that apply to scrolling. One is scrolling, of course, the other is scrolling linked, which allows you to control the same scrolled values but have different settings. So here on my Bridge 6, I've set up foot switch 2 and foot switch 5 as linked scrolling foot switches. Foot switch 2 is the scrolling mode, foot switch 5 is linked mode. So you can see here we have the normal switch label as well as a colon and a value. So if I press switch 2, you can see I'm incrementing this value by 8, and that will be sending the CC message I have there and changing the value every time I press the switch. So every time I press foot switch 2, it sends the CC message, but it changes the value by the number I've set, which is by increments of 8. On the scrolling linked switch on foot switch 5, I've changed the color just for the sake of it, but I've changed the sending mode to pendulum, which means that when I reach the end, it will actually then decrease. Let me show you how this is set up. Go into our switches, select foot switch 2, go into the configuration. I've got this on scrolling mode, as I said. The direction is forwards, which means it will just continue to send incremental values, and then when it reaches the end, it will reset to the start. I've left the minimum and maximum as 0 and 127, but you can limit that as much as you like. The reason those values were going up in 8s is because I've set the step size to 8. You can set that for anything from 1 to 32, which means that you can really dial in exactly what numbers you want to be scrolled, and then of course you can change the LED color. Let's save that and exit, and we'll go up to switch 5 to see how that was set up. This is set to scrolling linked. It's linked to foot switch 2, and the direction I set to pendulum. As I showed you, it gets to the end and then goes back again. More commonly, you would probably set your link switch to reverse, which means that it just does the opposite direction of what your main switch does. So I would have this one in forward, this one in reverse, and that would mean we could just go backwards and forwards whenever we needed to. The send is the same as on the sequential mode, where it will always send that message that's assigned to the scrolling as soon as you press the switch, or you can specifically set it to only be sent when you do the secondary action, which might be to long hold the switch or to double press the switch. Let's show you how that works. So if I chose this as hold toggle and save that, then what will happen here is the message on this foot switch 5 of value 56 will only be sent once I actually toggle the switch on. And then I just press it, and I've queued up the value of 24, but it will only actually send when I hold that toggle. Another thing you can do with the scrolling mode, of course, is actually change that switch name. So let's go to switch 2 and change the switch name. And then you can see that we've changed the label here. So you can just change that to up and down, or you could change it to the particular preset name or a direction. You could write forwards and backwards. You could really do anything you want there, of course. And as I've said before, you can use the web editor at edit.piratemidi.com, and you can just type all those things in and it makes it really fast. For tutorials on the web editor, look out for some future videos covering how to do everything we've covered in these videos in the web editor. Okay, now let me show you how to set up an actual MIDI message to be sent when you're using the scrolling mode. We'll enter the menu on our Bridge 6 here, we'll go to our switch 2, which is our primary scrolling switch. You won't be setting these MIDI messages on the linked switch because it's just linked to whatever's being controlled with switch 2. So let's go into the messages, and we'll go backwards because that gets us straight to the scrolling message stack. Now let's set some messages. Let's edit this one. So currently what's happening is we've got a control change here on channel 1 with number 1 and value 127. And what that means is the first time you press the scrolling switch, it will increment this value from the starting value of 127. So what will happen is it will send CC1 value 0 if your step is set to 1, because that will just increment it from 127 up to 0. And then if you press it again, it will increment it to 1. However, if you want to start at a specific value, you can just set the value to something different. So when you press that switch the first time, now it will go from 120 up to 121, or 127 if you set the increment as 7. Let's save that. And now you can actually add another message to this stack. So we can add another control change. We'll send on channel 2, and this can be number 7, and we're going to start with a value of 3. And what this means is that now every time we press that switch, it will now scroll both of those messages at once. So it will send CC1 value 120 and increment that, and at the same time it will also, with the same foot switch press, send CC7 on channel 2 and increment that one from value 3 to value 4. So you can add a bunch of messages here. Let's add a whole bunch. So you can add up to 16 messages in the scrolling stack, and all 16 of those messages can be incremented from whatever starting value you choose with one press of a foot switch. Something else you might want to do with your scrolling switch is skip to particular values at some point. And with our smart messages, you can use those on any other foot switch to do just that. Let's go into switch 1 and set some smart messages on our toggle on message stack. We'll edit this message that's here, we'll change it to a smart message. And then as you can see, we can get some smart messages which are specifically designed for the scrolling modes. So you can set switch 1 to reset the scrolling position back to its initial value immediately. You can increment the scrolling value with something else. So this is similar, I suppose, to the scrolling link switch, where you can control the actual scrolling primary switch with another switch. But this one can have separate rules. So this is just incrementing, whereas your scrolling linked, you could have that doing a particular thing like pendulum, or it could be set to a different value, a different step value for scrolling. Say your primary could be set to steps of 2, but your reverse could be set to steps of 1. It's really, really flexible. And then on top of increment, you've obviously got your decrement. On top of increment and decrement messages, we've also got smart messages to go to particular scrolling messages and target just that one message in the stack instead of doing all of the messages in the stack at once. So here we have set step scrolling, and the step corresponds to which number in the scrolling message stack you want to target. So say I've got 3 messages in there and I just want to use a switch to make sure that I'm only sending out a scrolling value for step 2. So let me save this here and show you what I mean. Now, when I toggle on foot switch 1, this switch, the scrolling switch, will now no longer send all the messages in the scrolling stack. It will just send the second message in the scrolling stack because that's what I've activated. Now, the other smart messages for scrolling can do similar things. Queue next scrolling will get the next message in the stack instead of just choosing a specific one. Queue scrolling will bring up the next message, so the next time you press it, it will send the second message in the stack. So just to reiterate, to be nice and clear, the steps here correspond to the numbered message in the scrolling message stack, which has a limit of 16 messages. And if you choose step 6, it will go to the 6th message there. And when you use the scrolling action, it will only be sending out that message and scrolling the value of that message. All the others will be ignored. That covers all the smart messages for the scrolling mode. It covers the settings of the scrolling mode. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments or contact us through our Discord server or via Facebook. Thanks very much.